Ladies and gents, what a treat we've got for you today. Steve Gregory. How are you doing, Steve?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. Right, we're going to go through everything to do with you. So your life in fishing, the records, because obviously you held the records, didn't you, for a while?
Yeah,
Those massive weights of fish, obviously the pace, fishery management, all that sort of thing. But I want to start on a bit of a background with yourself. How did you start fishing? Was it like dad and lad sort of thing, or was it mates, or just how did you start?
Well, I reckon it probably started off being quite young, going with me, my dad, my uncle, my granddad. We used to go on the trains or the Lincolnshire rivers, obviously travelling down from Sheffield. Obviously, it's all the silverfish kind of fishing, but I sort of grew up with that and catching bream and roach. And everybody was happy in them days.
Yeah.
Not much carrying a tackle or anything like that, so it was all right. But that's basically where I started off.
Okay, so what was it? Did you ever think that you'd get into match fishing, or was it literally like pleasure fishing, or was it match focused, or?
Well, I reckon at that time I got no even ambition to match fishing. I think the earliest sort of thought of match fishing is when I sort of got involved as a young and only like early teens when my dad and my granddad and them was fishing pub matches. I used to jump on the coach and go with the guys and have a bit of a laugh as you do on the coach. And one day I just asked if I could join in. And they all laughed and said, well, if you want to, sure. But we'll have your pants down. And it didn't actually turn out like that. I think I did better than most of them. So That's my first real remembering anything to do with match fishing.
And how old would you have been then?
I would say probably maybe 11, 12-year-old, something like that.
Right, nice. So you've obviously started fishing rock hard venues. I'm guessing the weights weren't massive in those days. What were you catching? Roach and bream, I'm guessing on the drains, was it?
Yes.
And then how has it progressed into sort of like commercial fisheries and that sort of thing? What did you have a bit of time off chasing, doing what lads do, or did you just follow through with your fishing and get into your like commercial style fishing then?
Yeah, I think, like you say, you get to that age where fishing takes a bit of a backseat, which obviously did for myself as well as everybody else, I'd imagine. Then probably my early 20s, I would say, I was getting a bit into fishing, started going down on the River Don with my friend John Bridges and a few other guys, catching some trout, and there weren't many fish in there, to be fair, at them times, but and it sort of started a little bit of a fire inside of me, and I just thought, wow, I want to go fishing a bit. So I finished up joining a working men's club, or a private club it was actually, and joined their fishing club, and I used to go every single match with them, and basically they had my pants on.
Right.
I never won anything, but every time I went, I was asking people how they'd done it, can you show me what you've done, blah, blah, blah. And this is all on the River Trent at that time, a few under with them. And every time I went, I just learned a little bit, kept asking. The guys were always willing to help until it got to the point where I started winning all the matches.
Right.
And then they weren't interested anymore. And then they had a little meeting one day and they banned me from the club because I was winning everything.
Oh, that's nice of them, wasn't it? Did that force you to move on, did it?
Yeah, well, it did. But to be fair, one of the guys who used to go in the club, he was fishing that fishing club, Ernest Crawshaw, they call him, and he suggested I should go and join a club, a proper fishing club. And I thought, I'm not good enough for this, but he sort of built me up to think I was good enough to do it. So he took me down one day. I went to Darnell Horty in Sheffield and I joined. The guys were great, fantastic crack. We went on a lot of matches. I learnt a lot and started doing all right, to be fair. And all down to Ernest. He gave me the confidence, really, to think I was good enough. And then, obviously, from there, I moved on to Firth Park, which was Fur Pack, and fishing the nationals, and we did really well. And I came up with a few ideas for fishing, which worked.
Right.
And both the clubs used it in the Division 2 National on the Trent, and we finished first and second. So it was all right. And I got a bit of a nickname.
Right, what was the nickname?
I was always coming up with things and ideas to catch fish, and a lot of them worked, some didn't, as you can imagine. But I was always keen to try things. I never ever would say, nah, that don't work, without trying it. I've always said, like, you don't know if it works or not unless you've tried it yourself. So that's something for everybody to remember.
Yeah, come on, what was the nickname?
Just listen to other people.
What was the nickname?
Well, I came up with a super gluing all the maggots together, and I call them the magworm.
Right.
And they just looked like a little red worm that used to wriggle like hell. And so they used to call me the magworm. At that time, I used to have a Sierra estate, and one of the lads, Mick Wilson, used to say, well, I can tell when you're coming down. He says, I can see 3 Sierras super glued together coming down the road. Like, so.
So you obviously got some stick when you were coming up with things. Was it obviously that sort of mind when you were thinking about the paste and that sort of thing? Was it, you know, you're always trying things, you want to come up. Did you think, I want to do something in fishing, or was it the fact that you started fishing commercials? What made you start thinking about the paste?
Well, to be fair, I mean, when I was a kid, when I was a nipper, my granddad was always making baits like paste for catching tench and stuff on the Wootton, and things like that stick in your mind. And then I was actually working in a tattle shop one day, and one of the guys said to me, oh, you really ought to come down to Drayton Res, you know, fishing's amazing, absolutely amazing. They're catching nearly 100 pound of fish on there, these carp, what they put in, you want to come and try it? And I just sort of dismissed it, thinking, well, no. And then a few months down the line, everybody's saying, oh, you really want to go down there? One day I plucked the courage up and went down with a couple of mates. And I was hooked.
Right.
And everybody's using sort of lunch and meat, maggots, worms. And I just thought, God, I'm going to make some paste up. And I spent probably 2 weeks messing about with this certain mix, trying to get it right. And we went down one day, me and a couple of lads, Graham Lavender and a couple of other lads, and we used this paste, and we absolutely took the place apart. It just spiraled from there. And you can imagine when you go into a place like that and you know for a fact you're going to win the match.
Yeah.
It's a feeling what you can't explain. You're just turning up and you're thinking, everybody's pool spotter. I don't want to sound big-headed when I'm saying this, but that's just how we felt.
No, that's obviously at the time when you're so far ahead of everyone.
That's right.
And fishing,
then obviously... Sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say, fishing probably isn't like it is now, where everything's become to sort of a level where you're only making baby steps. You were making like this giant leap in front of everyone.
Yeah.
And then it comes down to like, you've got the bait, then it comes down to like the kit refinement and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic feeling when you're driving somewhere, I bet. And like you say, you know you're going home with some money.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, when I started winning all these matches down there, and people were saying, well, we're not fishing, we can't compete. And then a few people started saying, oh, we sell us a bit of this paste, or make us a bit of this paste. And I finished up going down there with big, massive bucketfuls of balls of paste and pre-salt pellets, and all the guys were coming up to me and getting all the bait off me. And then they started catching a lot more. And one day, one of the guys says, you want to start selling this? You know, it's good gear. If you want to start selling it, you might make a bob or two. And then one day I was just thinking, maybe I should try it. So obviously the dry ingredients, mix them all together, put them in bags, give a few people it to try it, and that was basically where I started.
Right.
But, the fishing wise was amazing. Obviously, at that time the fish were a lot smaller than what they are now.
What size do you think they were at that time?
I would say when I first started fishing, they were probably, I'd say, around about £2 a piece.
Okay.
And then they grew so fast; it was amazing how fast they grew. And then before you know it, it was £5 a piece. And then you can imagine the weight you can amass when you're catching fish fast at that kind of size.
So, as far as the records go, then, so where were the records and what weight were the records? Because you held, how many times did you break the UK match record?
I did that 3 times in total. I did it twice at Drayton. I did it first in 1997, and I had £197. That was previously held by Simon Littlewood. Yeah. He held the British record at that time with £101, I think it was, something like that. Simon's a friend of mine, he's a good lad.
Yeah.
And then that was 97, and it was just... Ooh.
I mean, when you talk about these weights now, people, obviously they're big weights still, but people are catching like, at some of the venues down south, there's like £800 weights or £600 weights. Yeah. It's obviously off the scale. But at the time, it was like... It was amazing. It was amazing. These were amazing weights.
Yeah, they were. Obviously, £197, then it went to, I think it was £212 or something like that within a couple of weeks. Yeah. And it was just sort of spiralling. And then everybody started catching more weights. But these weights had never been heard of before. It was just crazy. But the fishing itself needed a lot of refining because the old sort of techniques you used to catch carp just weren't fast enough. And obviously doing what I did, I finished up getting sponsorship with Maver and Andy from...
Matt.
Anyway, we got the elastics and we got the poles and we got all the stuff to do with all the big weights. I refined the technique where everybody was just holding the poles up in their air and dragging fish. And I sort of come up with this method where you could sort of like hit the fish, chip straight, like put your pole down, bring the fish straight in, up and in the net. And at that time, nobody was doing anything like that. I used to get 12, 15 people sometimes sat at back of me watching me fishing, which I didn't mind at all. I mean, obviously, I've always helped people in fishing, but...
What was the trick then? Was it a case of making that progression from light elastic to a heavier elastic, or what was the difference?
In one respect, yeah. I mean, when we first started catching these weights of fish, there were no big elastics. Vespi elastic, it was Andy at Vespi. He did a 14 solid, which was as strong as you could possibly get at that time. And this wasn't adequate, so we started doing the doubled up elastic.
Yeah.
As far as I know, I can't think anybody else was doing that at that time.
No.
And then one day he gave me a phone call and got in touch with me, and he says, we've got some 20 elastic, 16 and 20. I went, wow, I need some. So he sent me a big bag of this stuff, and I can always remember it, bright orange, 20 elastic, people saying, it's like bull rope. But you really needed it to get the weight at that time. So it progressed. And obviously, with the weights getting bigger, the tackle had to be stepped up as well, because there were so many people breaking the poles and the rods, just trying to do it with normal poles. It's impossible. So it was like a revolution, and all the fishing sort of changed from that point. Everybody wanted to catch carp, and they wanted to catch bigger and bigger weights. A friend of mine, Craig O'Brien, used to fish at Tunnel Barn a lot. He said to me one day, he says, have you heard about this new place, Earlswood Lakes? I went, no, I've never heard of that. I says, you want to go up there? He says, better than this. I went, no. He says, I'm telling you, it's better. And I just thought, not really interested. And then he phoned me one day and he says, I've got some bad news for you. I said, what's that? He says, I've just brought your record at Earlswood. I went, oh no, you're kidding. He says, yeah. He says, I'm having some labels printed. I'm doing my own baits now. I went, well, I'd hang on to them labels a bit. I'm coming up next week.
Right.
Just jokingly, like.
Yeah.
I went to look with my friend, John. We fished a couple of the open matches. Didn't know what to expect. Everybody's using stupid method feeders on the pole and all that, which is lethal in my experience. Went up there, fished a couple of matches. And next time we went to have the next one, because we did really well winning the matches, like. They turned around and said, all right, now there's no rules now for these matches. You can't use anything more than a 12 elastic.
Why was that?
They just tried to slow us down on the pole because they were all fishing like method feeders and they just couldn't compete. And then we had a match on there, and one of the lads who was beside him, like, I was absolutely bagging. I was really catching fast. I mean, the speed was unreal. And at the end of it, he says, you broke record. I went, nah, don't be silly. He said, I'm telling you. He said, you've got. He counted the fish, can't remember exactly. He says, how big are they? He says, they're a kilo a piece, £2 a piece. He says, you've definitely done it. And when it come to weighing in, I phoned John up the bailiff. I says, I said, Byron thinks I broke the record. Can you come down and just verify the weights? Which he did. And sure enough, £414 and 14 ounce.
Bloody hell, yeah.
I was doing bloody somersaults.
See that now is a massive weight, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even now, that is a huge weight. And obviously at the time, I remember reading about it. It was like unheard of. It was unheard of.
Yeah. And at that time, obviously, there was a lot of big sort of matches getting held on places like that. And I remember, I don't know if it was Darren Cox or what was it? They got a league match on there and they were fishing against one of the Brummie teams, one of the tackle shops, I can't think who it was now, one time ago. And he asked me if I go down and just give the team some tips on how to get them in fast. Yeah. So I took them down there and they're all sat at the back of me, all the starlets. And one of the lads, he started laughing and said, I can't remember what it was. And he started laughing and said, what's up? He went, you need some more shots on that float.
Yeah,
said,
right.
What do you mean? He went, no. He said, half of your body's showing. I went, there's a reason for that, trust me. And you needed to have that body stuck out because otherwise you were striking at liners all the time. And when
so there was that many fish in your peg. Obviously, you needed the body stuck out because it was going like this all the time.
Yeah. I mean, when you got a bite on there, it was you're whack.
Right.
And I showed him how to get them in really fast, and Darren actually timed me on one of the fish. I mean, he might correct me, but I think it was something like 5 seconds from striking at the bite to having the fish in the net.
Right.
And that was on like on the pole light, so it was pretty fast.
Yeah.
But I mean, it just sort of spiraled from there, to be fair, and the weights got better and better. And I just lost interest in chasing the weights. I'd sort of filled my appetite for catching them big weights, and I just wanted to concentrate more on proper fishing, if you understand what I mean.
Right.
And I just noticed that everybody then were chasing these big weights, and in one respect, I think the fishing deteriorated quite a lot because you got a new sort of type of angler what was fishing for these big weights, and a lot of them just didn't give a toss about the fish or fish's well-being.
Right.
I mean, it's one thing catching fish fast, getting them out fast, but there's another thing in treating the fish properly. I mean, you can still catch fish quite fast and in a safe way, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah. If you're nice and efficient and do everything nicely, it's different.
Carefully putting the fish in the net where you're landing net. Because now a lot of them, especially with the F1s, with this F1 fishing, they just rip the hook out and throw them into the keep nets.
Yeah. So you say you say proper fishing, you mean like natural venues, do you? Like rivers, canals, lakes?
Yeah, well, natural venues and venues where they're not too heavily stocked. So obviously, I've had a fishery and I know what it's all about. People want to stop the fishing to get the anglers there to make the money. But then
It
you've
becomes
got
a
also to think
vicious
about
circle, doesn't
fishers'
it?
welfare as well. I see it too many times, and there's too many fish in there. They're not getting enough people on there. Not enough bait going in. The fish getting poor health, and then they start getting problems and losing the fish. It just pains me to see it, to be honest. But
just going back to the paste, then, were you making was that your full-time job, the paste?
yes, I started off. I had a unit at Hillsborough in Sheffield, and I was making quite a lot, doing absolutely tons of it. I was supplying Leader, they had a lot, which supplied Woolworths and no other end of big sort of superstores, and it was doing really well. And it's sort of progressed, and everybody then wants to start copying it. You know how it is, so it loses its edge a little bit. But I still to this day say there's no place to touch it at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not one of these for using ground bait as base. I think ground bait is to put in your feeder, not to put on the hook.
So obviously your paste then, it had so many different ingredients and you were mega confident on it. I remember also that you, what was the slop that you had for feeding? I remember a feature.
TNT.
Yeah, there was a slop for feeding as well. Like you'd mix it to a soup. Yeah, feed it. Is that did you end up catching loads of fish on that, or was that sort of?
Yeah, that was amazing. To be fair, it's quite expensive to make. I didn't make a lot of money on it because of the price of the ingredients, but the people that actually used it, they just couldn't get enough of it. It was right. It was an attractant more than a ground bait. You'd put it in the water and it just draw the fishing from absolutely miles away. But there's no feed for them, so obviously straight onto your hook bait then, which was good.
Yeah. So, are you still making it now, or has that been scaled back, or?
Well, at the moment, obviously, I've been renovating this house for the best part of a year. So things have had to sort of have a bit of a backseat. As soon as I get the house finished, I will be starting up again. But obviously, I've had a few problems along the way.
Right.
I mean, in March last year, I actually stood on, I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, wow.
Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it, yeah. What is it? Is it a 6-inch nail?
It's a rusty 6-inch nail that went through my foot.
No, I don't.
I was taking an old cesspit out, stepped over into some long grass, and that just went straight through my foot, the ball of my foot.
Right.
I finished up in hospital. I had to have an operation. I got infection in the bone, nerve damage, which is still ongoing at the moment. I'm still under the hospital for it now, so bit inconvenient.
Yeah.
God, it did put pace in my fishing for quite a while, to be fair.
It sent a shimmer down my back.
Well, yeah, it's obviously it's a really old one. It's the house was built in 1874, but I wouldn't have thought that's from them, but it's very old.
So you've kept him as a little memento.
Yeah, I like to show it people.
Right, so that's took you out of action. But what you say, you're bringing the miracle paste back, are you?
Yeah, as soon as I've got the house finished, probably springtime, late spring, I will be starting to produce all the baits again, and I've got some ideas for some new baits. One which I sort of tried last year, and it was amazing.
Right.
I tried it a couple of weeks ago at one of the fisheries what I've been going to recently. Mm-hmm. Nobody's getting any bites whatsoever. Freezing cold, ice on the water. I put some of this stuff in, and I caught a few chub, and I did really well from the area, and there's some good anglers around me. So it's signs that it might just make something now.
Right.
Or something to work on that.
Right. So there's baits coming. So I think we've ticked the box for the paste and the records. Now you're back onto not natural venues, but venues that are less pressurised.
Yeah.
Catching sort of like the normal weights that everyone that we all sort of catch.
Yeah.
What sort of venues are you going to now? Sort of like, just after that sort of Drayton period, I was back onto natural venues.
Yeah, well, I started going to places like Westwood Lakes, at Boston.
Yeah.
I had a good spell there, and then we moved to a few other places. But most recently, I've been going to a place called Springvale Lakes,
Right.
which is not far from Lincoln, and it's 2 minutes from the A1, Morecambe Moor, so its access is really good for most people. And the fishing on there is just amazing. It's a new complex. It's not been up and running too long. I think there's 7 lakes on there, 7 big lakes. It's predominantly stocked with eyed, carp, chub, crucians, skimmers, but there are other fishing as well. But to be fair, the fishing on there, if you like silverfish, then it's a heaven for you. I mean, the eyed fishing is amazing. You can catch 150 pound of eyed if you want to do that. But it's one of them places you can go and you can target different species. You can fish for your carp and do real well, or you can fish for the eyed and do real well, or whatever you want to do. Nice. But it's something different. I mean, it's a change from the norm, to be fair.
Right. So I always think, them sort of venues, it's a bit of a headache, especially like this time of year with like gear that you're going to use. So what are you using? Like, is it all pole work? Is it?
No, not at all.
Right.
Majority is pole work, but obviously this time of year, then you've got to start thinking about waddlers, feeders, stuff like that. But I basically try and fish it out with the pole if I can.
Okay.
Just using the Middy poles, the 65, which I think is just absolutely
fantastic. Amazing. Yeah, I've got one. It's beautiful. Beautiful.
Well, I picked up many of these more expensive poles, and to be fair, they're not a patch.
Yeah.
It's just light and stiff, responsive. And obviously from fishing for the eyed, I use something like the Ivy's 6 to 8, the
orange. Yeah,
that's just absolutely forgiving on the eyed. Catch some big fish, you can still get them out on the pole, so that's good.
What sort of main lines? Are you someone who uses thick main lines, or are you someone who uses thin main lines? Do you like robust, thick main lines, or are you like?
Yeah, to be fair, I mean, the people that know me sort of think I'm a bit of an animal sometimes, because I'll fish sometimes when I'm fishing for carp, I'll use O20 in winter.
All
right. But I've got this mentality, whereas I don't think the fish are that bothered so much about the line. It's what's on the hook.
Okay.
But obviously, fishing for silvers, then I do scale down a little bit. But to be fair, I never ever go anywhere less than 012. At Springvale, fishing for the eyed, I'll fish 014 mainline, 012 bottoms. When it warms up, I'll just go 014 straight through.
Right.
And I'll fish 14 hooks, 16 in winter, and that's it.
So
I've still got some of the old... Sorry.
I was going to ask you about the hooks. What
the hook,
are you using like big hooks then to match your big line?
Yeah. I mean, I really don't think it makes a lot of difference. I have proved it on a few occasions to people what's been outside of me, but I'm using the old Middy Ep.3 13s.
Right.
And they're just amazing. I don't think you can get them anymore, but I've got a stock of them, and I've just got 100% confidence. But I'm not saying these are the be-all and end-all.
No, they are like mega strong, those hooks. So obviously, you're not too worried then about a thicker gauge hook. You're thinking my bait's that good that they're going to eat it, whatever. Is that how you're thinking in your head?
Yeah, that's exactly what I think. And when you study fishing, I mean, when I was younger, not too much younger, but I used to have tanks and I used to put fish in. I used to experiment with baits, hook lengths, different lines, different hooks, watch how the fish feed, how they react to certain things. And until you've done that, you've got no idea what fish think. I mean, you think, oh, yeah, I'll go down to an 08. Oh, yeah, put 08 on. Then you've got 2 lines, an 08 and an 014, and the fish don't pay any difference to either one. They're both exactly the same as far as the fish is concerned. I'm not saying that's the case everywhere, but majority of places I fish, I mean, it's a case. But I know Giles Cocker, and I fished with him when I was sponsored with MAP, and he was he was dead set that you needed thick lines in winter. He used to fish O20s all the time in winter for carp.
Yeah.
So the hook in the loop and all that.
Yeah, and obviously a doubled up line, the hook in the loop that he used to use, it's doubled up, so it's even thicker.
Yeah.
He was interested in the movement, wasn't he? He wanted that movement.
Yeah,
the
that's
hooking
right.
property.
I can remember being outside of him one day down at Moreland's farm, and he showed me this rig, this feeder rig he's using, and I didn't laugh at him, but I just thought it's a bit over the top for winter time, but to be fair, it didn't make any difference to his catch. We both caught really well, as weights were more or less identical, but he was using this bull rope, so it proves that it doesn't really matter that much.
No, it doesn't matter. It sounds like you've travelled along all over the place for your fishing, Steve.
Yeah.
I mean, is that the same now, or is it scaled back a little bit now?
Well, to be fair, I used to go all over, but there's a lot of contributing factors these days, and one of the main ones is the amount of traffic on road.
Yeah.
We used to drive down to Drayton. I used to fish there 3-4 times a week in the heart of it. And when I first started fishing there, the motorways were pretty quiet. And by the time I finished going down to Drayton, you got on the motorway and it was just like a car park. And I just can't do it. I get road rage.
Yeah.
I just get, it irritates me when you get some stupid people doing stupid things on the road. And, story of my life, though, I get a bit...
you get a bit angry.
With things.
So, obviously, all that's gone because you were just telling me you've got this beautiful house now.
Yes.
And you've got a beautiful lake. You called it a pond, but I think I'd call it a lake if I was you. You've got a beautiful lake. What are the plans?
Right, when I moved from my last job, I run a fishery and leisure park for 2 years. And it was all work. I worked 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Never had no holidays. It was just like Christmas, bank holidays, New Year, just work. But having said that, that's what I do. I do work hard. Whatever I do, I put my full self into it. But when I left here, I just thought, I need to have a little bit of R&R, if you know what I mean, a bit of relaxation and not working as hard. So we bought this property. It was 2 cottages, which I've knocked into one, make it one big house. And I've got a couple of acres of land, and I've got a pond, which when it's all tidied up, there'll be 12, 15 pegs on it. That's it. That's all I want. I don't really want anything bigger than that. It's just a case of it'll pay a few bills, I suppose, but it's more or less for all my mates and let them come down and have a fish. And I know for a fact they're going to like it, because when I do fisheries, I don't go and buy half. I try to make them as good as possible, and this will be amazing.
Right.
Even at the moment now, it's amazing. I had a couple of lads on back in the last year fishing it, and they just couldn't believe how good it was.
Are you planning to put carp in there, or is it planning to go down the route that you like, which is obviously like mixed fishery?
Well, to be fair, there's a lot of fish in there, to be honest. A lot of carp, F1s, skimmers, big roach, perch, big eels, bits of all sorts, really. Right. I think there's a couple of little barbel in there. But I want it to be a mixed fishery. I don't want it just to be carp bagging water. I do tend to find that the lads would like to have mixed fishery, not dissing anybody in any way or form. But I think the guys that like to do mixed fishery tend to be happy with a smaller net of fish, £100 and £50.
Yeah.
Which I think, personally, if you catch £150, you've had a good day's fishing.
It represents a lot of bites, that does, from those.
It does.
On a mixed fishery, it's a lot of bites, that is a lot of action. And it's nice. There's a couple of venues near me where you strike, you don't quite know what the next fish is. And you can actually, if you do have a match, you can target different species and actually have a match plan rather than, bull at a gate, I'm just catching carp. And it's nice to have that sort of tactical change in a match, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you must admit that not knowing what you're going to catch next just adds a little bit of excitement.
Yeah.
Plus the fact, I think a lot of fishermen are losing certain skills in the fishing, if you understand what I mean. How many people go on rivers and fish, moving waters, stick floats, fishing wagglers in fast-flowing rivers? It's all skills what's getting lost. And I know the fishing in the river's not what it used to be, but even now I still go and have a practice it, keep it up a little bit, because it's all ammunition, and you never know, one day it might turn around and it might just go back the other way.
Yeah.
And people will have lost them skills, and then,
there's plenty of river matches on if you look for them. The Trent,
yeah.
Obviously you could go to the Trent around Newark. There's some fantastic matches around there during the summer. I think they've opened a few more sections of the Avon up as well, so that's going to be even better. So I think there's still a circuit for river anglers, but
yeah, there is definitely.
Commercials is where it's at, isn't it? Still.
Yeah, well, the thing is with commercials, what I call it lazy fishing. There's hardly any walking to do, if any. You can park behind your bag and mortar.
Nothing wrong with being lazy.
You carry 10 times more stuff than what you actually need.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all guilty. I mean, I'm probably as guilty as the next man. When you're carrying, like, your rollers, what you're carrying now, you've got 3 big rollers, and that probably equates to the weight of all your tackle when you were younger.
Okay.
And because you can just chuck it straight out back of your van, it's not an issue, is it?
Yeah, it's convenient. It's so convenient, is it? To rock up, catch loads of fish, stand a nice comfy peg. It's just, that's why it's so popular. It's obvious.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So, Steve, I'm going to wish you well with your lake. I'm going to wish you well with your bait as well. And I want to get some bait. I want to try it. And I want to analyse it, because I remember going to...
give you something special, mate.
Listen.
It's special to try this year.
I remember going to Drayton Reservoir, trying to emulate Steve Gregory on the pole. First of all, my elastic snapped. So I wasn't even close to getting near you. And obviously this is just when I was a kid, pleasure fishing days. Didn't have a clue about fishing, especially going Drayton, because I'd fished the canal. I'd never hooked a carp. So I've gone to Drayton with number 6 elastic, and it's obviously just snapped my elastic. But me and my mate tried to make a paste, and we were messing around with brown crumb, cat meat, all sorts of things to try and make a paste. Yeah. Trying to emulate Steve Gregory. He'd got this wonder paste. What could it be? And it was like, it was at the time, I remember it just taking place apart. But you're still going to what are you going to call it? You're still going to call it miracle bait, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's still going to be miracle bait, miracle paste. Because I've got such a vast following, especially on the paste. I'm getting absolutely dozens every day emails from people. Oh, you've started making it yet? And to be able to have to tell them that, it's not being produced just yet, it's a bit of a sickener, really, but I've got to get my priorities right. I've got to get my house sorted out. Otherwise, Mrs. is going to string me up by the old...
Yeah.
So, priorities, really. But come springtime, I've got most of the work cracked off in here, and then we'll get on with it. We'll have some more products out there and give it a good old push again, and I'm sure we'll break a few more records somewhere.
Hopefully. Right. Steve, thanks very much for your time. We'll do it again.
You're welcome.
You crack on, get the lake sorted, crack on with the houses as well, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate. Thank you very much.